My heart goes out to everyone here.
Sure.
But
sure.
Some premeditated murderers don't get 35 years.
I think it says a lot that we live in a society where Kyle Rittenhouse can leave where he's from, go with a long gun that he ain't authorized to have, he's too young to have, shoot two people, and people can find him innocent. It says a lot that George Zimmerman can gun down a dude after the police, a young man after the police told him not to follow him. That we have a Tamir Rice who gets shot by a police officer who was so poorly trained and was such a bad prospect that he'd been fired from other police departments. And they said no amount of training would make him a viable officer, and he's acquitted. We've seen that. And I don't want, first off, I want to acknowledge that loss of life is tragic. And I don't want people to be treated like Karmelo Anthony was. But I think that everybody should have the same presumption that you gave those other people. And he had an all-white jury. Let me tell you something. Nothing all-white is good for you. Nothing. I don't care if it's sugar, rice, potatoes, pasta, or jury. Nothing all-white.
This case did not just split a courtroom. It split the internet, the community, and almost everybody watching from the outside. A 17-year-old student, Austin Metcalf, lost his life at a high school track meet. Another teenager, Karmelo Anthony, walked into court claiming self-defense and walked out with a murder conviction and a 5-year prison sentence. And that is where everything exploded, because for some people, the verdict was simple. A life was taken, and the jury made the right call. But for others, the case raised a much darker question. When does self-defense count? And who actually gets believed when they say they were scared? Then, D.L. Hughley stepped into the conversation, and he did not come in calm. He connected Karmelo's case to a much bigger pattern in America. Cases where race, fear, weapons, and self-defense all collide. And once he brought up names like Kyle Rittenhouse, George Zimmerman, and Tamir Rice, the conversation stopped being just about one Texas courtroom. Now, the real question is not whether people are emotional. Of course they are. A teenager's dead. Another teenager is going to prison. The real question is why two different cases can make people feel like justice speaks in two completely different languages.
I want to get your thoughts on this case out of Texas.
Right.
Karmelo Anthony, he's 19 now. He was 17 at the time. Got into an altercation with one of his high school, I think someone he knew from high school, pushed him out of the tent, didn't want him in the tent. He said no. They got into a fight. He stabbed him, and then the kid ended up dying. And now he's getting 35 years.
And this is why DL's reaction hit so hard. He was not only talking about the stabbing, he was talking about the standard. Because in court, self-defense is not just about fear. It is about whether a jury believes that fear was reasonable. That one word, reasonable, is where cases either collapse or survive. In Karmelo Anthony's trial, prosecutors argued the stabbing was not reasonable force. They said Austin Metcalf was not attacking him with deadly force, and they questioned why Karmelo did not just leave the tent. The defense painted a completely different picture. A smaller teenager, surrounded during a chaotic rain delay, reacting in fear after being confronted and pushed. That is why the verdict became so controversial. The jury did not just reject self-defense. They also had the option to consider a lesser punishment under sudden passion, but Karmelo still received 35 years. So for supporters, the sentence felt crushing. For Austin's family, anything less would have felt like their son's life had been minimized. And when no black jurors ended up on the final panel, that became another gasoline can thrown onto an already burning fire.
We want justice! We always show this as mercy. I swear to God, don't stick it.
We just left the courtroom. The family walked out crying, screaming.
It almost felt like things happened in slow motion when that verdict came out. You know, one lady, she physically collapsed to the ground and was just crying, people having to pull her up.
What this process did is shown that black lives do not matter in Collin County. It showed very clearly that a black boy was allowed not one black soul on a jury.
Not surprised. I knew he was going to be found guilty. Of course, he's a young black man who unalived a white, not even a man, a young black boy who unalived a white boy, a bully with a twin brother. What's that man named Mr. Chow? He gets off with unaliving someone that was running, a boy that was running, a black boy that was running from the store. But Karmelo Anthony gets chased and defends himself against bullies, and he is found guilty. I knew it. I'm so disappointed.
So chasing after somebody and shooting them in the back is seen as self-defense. But defending yourself when somebody is trying to intimidate and bully you is not. Alright, man. Y'all got it.
Outside the legal arguments, the emotion was impossible to ignore. This was not a quiet verdict where people just went home. The moment that guilty decision came down, the case moved from the courtroom to the streets, to live streams, to podcasts, to celebrity commentary, and straight into the middle of America's race and justice debate. Karmelo's supporters saw a young black defendant facing a jury, with no black juror seated. His family and supporters argued that the system did not give him the same grace other defendants have received in other high-profile self-defense cases. But Austin Metcalf's family saw something completely different. They saw their son, their brother, a 17-year-old athlete, killed in front of other students at a school event. That is what makes this case so explosive. Both sides are grieving something. One family is grieving a child who will never come home. Another family is watching their son begin a 3-5-year sentence. And the public is fighting over what the verdict means. Was it accountability? Was it unequal justice? Was it a rejected self-defense claim? Or was it all of those things colliding at the same time? Now, listen to how emotional it got outside that courtroom.
Allegations hanging on his ass. That's why, man, they coerce them kids. But one thing about kids can't lie to professionals under pressure. When you was told, when you gave a statement in the beginning, you can't come back and amend it later and say, well, I meant. No, what you said that night is lawful. All white jury, everybody 50 plus older. You mean to tell me they can't find nobody that's a jury of his peers? A jury of his peers. I cannot believe Collin County dropped the ball like this here. I cannot believe as racist as Collin County has been since they have existed. All you rappers, New Dallas, everybody who been polluting this gangster lifestyle, all the YNs, all the drill rappers, we want to see where y'all at. We want to see where y'all at right now, because it's an innocent boy who was trying to protect himself. Now we're going to see who all ride for their coaching. Because y'all been putting this negative energy out through this music. We're going to see who really what they talking about. Don't just try to take from the people. Now the people need the help. Now we're going to see who really stand up, because this boy was an innocent boy who would have dealt with each and every one of us, or whatever y'all say, because this is what y'all write.
Now it's a problem because he's guilty. We already knew he was guilty. But now it's because his lawyer was incompetent. Well, they raised $600,000. Okay? Couldn't they find a competent lawyer? Okay? Not only that, the jury has nothing to do with your skin color, okay? The jury is of your peers, meaning of your peers, not your skin color or however it is that you relate. I mean, did y'all learn anything in school? I mean, a quick Google search will tell.
That courtroom reaction tells you everything. This was not just a verdict people disagreed with. This was a verdict people felt in their bodies. People were crying, collapsing, yelling, and trying to process how a case that started under a school tent became a national symbol. But here is where the story gets even more complicated. A lot of the online debate is not happening inside the facts of the trial. It is happening inside comparisons. People are not only asking, what happened to Austin? They are asking, why did Karmelo get 35 years when other people in other cases walked free? That comparison is dangerous, but it is powerful. Because once people believe the justice system is inconsistent, every verdict becomes bigger than itself. Karmelo's case became a mirror. People looked into it and saw everything they already feared about race, courts, juries, and whose fear counts as self-defense. But there is still a line this story has to walk. Austin Metcalf was a real person. His family's pain is real. Karmelo Anthony is also a real person, now facing decades in prison. The internet can turn them into symbols, but the damage is not symbolic. It is permanent.
Gray-haired white women on that jewelry that's dealing with white guilt about going to heaven is not going to have no compassion about a kid that's been straight A from the time he's ever read a book in school, has no history of violence, has saved children's lives by risking his own life by jumping in to save somebody from drowning. This kid has no violence. Austin, on the other hand, is a violent brute with some sexual rape.
Now, this is where Rick Chow's name enters the conversation, and this is the comparison that has people furious. In South Carolina, Rick Chow was accused of murder after he shot 4-year-old Cyrus Carmack-Belton in 2023. Prosecutors argued Chow and his son chased Cyrus from the store, and reporting says the chase went more than 100 yards. Cyrus was shot in the back. But Chow's defense argued he acted to protect his son after allegedly seeing a gun. And in June 2026, a jury found him not guilty. So when people look at that verdict beside Karmelo Anthony's 5-year sentence, they see a contradiction. One case involved a teenager who said he reacted in fear during a physical confrontation. The other involved a store owner who chased a 4-year-old and was acquitted after claiming self-defense. Legally, the details are different. The states are different. The evidence is different. The juries are different. But emotionally, people are not processing it like a legal textbook. They're asking one raw question. How can one person claim fear and go home, while another claims fear and loses decades of his life? That question is why this next clip is so heated.
We have an exclusive interview with the parents of a Texas teenager sentenced this week to 35 years in prison for killing a fellow high school athlete. On Tuesday, a jury found 19-year-old Karmelo Anthony guilty of murdering 17-year-old Austin Metcalf. His lawyers plan to appeal. They say prosecutors wrongly excluded black people from the jury. Anthony's parents spoke with Jonah Kaplan about their son, the trial, and their message to the Metcalf family.
My son didn't intend to hurt anyone. My son was defending himself.
It took less than 3 hours for a jury to reject 19-year-old Karmelo Anthony's claims of self-defense in the stabbing death of 17-year-old Austin Metcalf. Prosecutors argued Anthony intentionally killed Metcalf after being taunted and shoved by Metcalf and his teammates at a high school track meet.
Take us inside that courtroom. What stuck out to you?
What stuck out to me?
But this is also where creators need to be careful. Some online reactions have started repeating claims about Austin Metcalf that are not central to the verified court record. Do not build the story around rumors. The strongest version of this video does not need that. The verified drama is already heavy enough. A school track meet, a rain delay, a confrontation under a tent, a stabbing, a rejected self-defense claim, a 5-year sentence, no black jurors on the final panel, and then another case in South Carolina where a 4-year-old was shot after a chase and the shooter was acquitted. That is enough to make people stop scrolling. And now the conversation is moving beyond lawyers and families. It is reaching celebrities, comedians, political voices, and hip-hop culture. Some people are asking why rappers and public figures speak loudly about street issues, but go quiet when a real case turns into a national debate about race, self-defense, and the courtroom. Whether people agree or disagree with Karmelo's supporters, that call-out is part of the viral energy, because the internet loves one thing more than a verdict. It loves asking who stayed silent when everybody else was watching.
Number one was the all-white jury, but I was trying to be, like, all right, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, the truth is on our side.
At the sentencing hearing, the defense called only one witness on Anthony's behalf, his mother, Kayla Hayes.
What did you tell the jury?
To have mercy on my son.
What do you say to his grieving family?
It's unfortunate to where nobody wins. We've all been hurt by it. Everybody.
That poor boy is fixing to experience a life that I would not wish upon anyone.
Austin Metcalf's father, Jeff, called Anthony's sentencing bittersweet.
What it boils down to for me is this.
But not everyone is buying the outrage, and this is important for the video, because if you only show one side, the story feels like propaganda. The reason this case is going viral is because both sides think the other side is ignoring the obvious. One side says, Karmelo was a teenager, he was confronted, he was pushed, and the jury did not give his self-defense claim a fair look. The other side says, Austin Metcalf is dead. Karmelo had a knife at a school event, and the jury heard the evidence before deciding this was murder. Then there is the jury issue. Supporters focus on the fact that no black jurors were seated. Critics respond that a jury is not supposed to match the defendant's race 1 for 1. It is supposed to be selected through legal procedures. But appeal experts say the real legal question is not just the final racial makeup. The issue is whether prosecutors improperly struck black jurors because of race, which would raise a Batson challenge. That is the part most social media arguments skip. The internet argues emotions. Appeals courts argue procedure. And those are two completely different arenas.
Austin will never walk through that door again and never give me a hug.
The case drew national attention, prompting protests in support of both teams. And both families involved say they've received threats.
This morning, had multiple emails, texts, threatening me, calling me all sorts of names.
During our interview, the Anthonys made a point to call back one man they say continues to dox them.
Why you calling me, man?
To make fun of you.
Both families urged supporters to tame their emotions.
I forgave him. But people need to understand about forgiveness. Forgiveness was not for him. Forgiveness was for me, so I don't carry the rage, the hate, and that around. It will eat me up like cancer.
At the end of the day, there's nothing we can say or do for people to accept it.
After all the yelling online, the most painful part of this story is when the families speak. Because suddenly, it stops being a debate topic and becomes real again. Karmelo Anthony's parents sat down after the verdict and said what every parent in that position would probably feel, that their son did not intend for this to happen, that he was defending himself, and that nobody truly wins. But at the same time, Austin Metcalf's family is living with the one thing no appeal can undo. Their son is gone, and that is why this case is so hard to cover. If you lean too far one way, you erase the grief of the victim's family. If you lean too far the other way, you erase the concerns people have about race, jury selection, and how self-defense is judged. The cleanest way to tell this story is to let both pains exist at the same time. Karmelo's family believes the system failed him. Austin's family believes justice was served, but even justice cannot bring Austin back. When you hear the parents talk, the viral noise gets quieter for a second, because behind every trending case, there are families who will never be the same again.
Look, so Rick Chow, he ran and chased somebody 130 yards, shot him 4 times in the back, and was found not guilty. But Karmelo Anthony, he got jumped. He got jumped and stabbed him and told somebody, and I did that. I told him if they come get at me, he did. He told them. And still was, man. So what we need to do?
The jury did not take long to reject the self-defense argument. According to reporting, jurors reached the guilty verdict in about 3 hours, and the punishment phase moved fast after that. Karmelo's mother was the only defense witness during sentencing, asking for mercy. But the sentence still came back at 35 years. That detail matters, because it shows how firm the jury's decision was. They were not sitting in days of deadlock. They were not stuck between murder and manslaughter for long. They heard the testimony, saw the evidence presented, and came back with murder. But for Karmelo's supporters, that speed is part of the problem. They see it as proof the jury had already made up its mind. For Austin's supporters, that same speed means the evidence was clear. That is why the same fact can create two completely different reactions. One side hears 3 hours and thinks they rushed him. The other side hears 3 hours and thinks they knew exactly what happened, and that is the power of this case. Every detail has two meanings depending on who is watching.
We begin tonight's broadcast with a follow-up to last night's not guilty verdict of Rick Chow, a day after he was acquitted of murdering 14-year-old Cyrus Carmack-Belton. We saw reaction, or we're getting reaction, from the community. Our crews saw protesters gathered outside Chow's former gas station off of Park Lane Road in Columbia. Richland deputies also at the store now at this hour. They have been there since shortly after the verdict was announced last night. News 19's Whitney Sullivan speaking with criminal defense attorney John Mobley tonight. He was asked, where does he believe things possibly broke down for the prosecution in presenting his case?
From opening statements, one of the vast contrasts that I saw between the prosecution and the defense, where I believe the prosecutors dropped the ball, is they didn't really do much to humanize the victim in the case. And I remember listening to both opening statements. And while the prosecutor, the solicitor, did mention he was 14 years old, that was kind of it. Had I been prosecuting that case, I would have talked about not only his age, where he went to school, hey, what he liked to do for fun, what video games he liked. I would have wanted to bring him to life so the jurors could have some image of this young man, this life in their mind, and they just didn't do that. Another something I would have done differently if I was a prosecutor, and I don't think that they really leaned into the fact that this team was hunted. They talked about him being chased out of the store without a bottle of water. That was kind of their big theme. They kind of hung everything on that, all about a bottle of water. This team was hunted. I mean, 130 yards. And I remember when, in opening statements, when they talked about that, one thing I thought was great was he described that it was that 130 yards would be the equivalent of a football field, goalpost to goalpost. Had I given that opening statement, I would have had that picture up there. I would have had a visual picture of a football field from goal.
Then another layer came out: threats, harassment, and doxing. Both families said they had been targeted. That is when the story turned from tragedy into a full-blown internet war. And this is exactly what happens when a criminal case becomes a content machine. People stop seeing families. They start seeing teams. Team Karmelo, Team Austin, Team Justice, Team Racism, Team Accountability. And once the internet picks teams, the cruelty gets louder than the facts. But the father's reactions show two different versions of pain. Austin's father talks about a son who will never walk through the door again. Karmelo's family talks about a son they believe acted out of fear and is now facing decades inside prison. There is no clean ending here. Even the word forgiveness becomes complicated. Forgiveness does not erase a verdict. It does not erase grief. It does not erase prison time. It is just one family trying to survive what the courtroom could not fix. So, before the video moves into the Rick Chow comparison, the audience needs to understand this. The outrage is viral, but the loss is permanent.
Post to goalpost, so the jury could see how far they hunted. These two grown men hunted this 14-year-old. And I would have used that word. I wouldn't have said chase. I would have said hunted. That's how I would have really portrayed this, and which I think is accurate, quite frankly. Now, on the flip side, the defense, in their opening statement, they talked about the defendant's credentials and how he came to America and how he built his business and his family. They gave the jury all this information to humanize this person. So, I mean, big difference. I think that made a big difference in the jury's mind because they can identify with one side more than the other.
Again, criminal defense attorney John Mobley with his opinion about what happened in this case. And new tonight, we're hearing from the Fifth Circuit solicitor Byron Gibson on the not guilty verdict. He did issue a statement late today saying that last night's verdict has brought on strong emotions from our local and national communities. He added that he's disappointed with last night's outcome and continues to believe that Chow's actions were not justifiable. However, he adds that he respects our criminal justice system and the jury's decision.
Now, the Rick Chow case is the reason this conversation refuses to die. In 2023, 4-year-old Cyrus Carmack-Belton was shot outside a Columbia, South Carolina convenience store. Chike Rick Chow, the store owner, was charged with murder. Prosecutors argue that Chow and his son chased Cyrus after accusing him of stealing water, and trial reporting says the chase went more than 100 yards from the store. Cyrus was shot in the back, but the defense told jurors a different story. They argued Chow believed his son was in danger after allegedly seeing Cyrus with a gun. And after more than 8 hours of deliberation, the jury found Chow not guilty. That verdict hit the community like a bomb. Protesters gathered outside the store. Cyrus's family rejected the outcome publicly and said they planned to continue fighting in civil court. For them, the question was simple. How can a child run away, get shot in the back, and nobody be held criminally responsible? Now place that beside Karmelo Anthony. In Texas, a teenager says he acted in fear during a physical confrontation and gets 35 years. In South Carolina, a store owner says he acted in fear after a chase and goes home. Legally, those cases are not identical, but emotionally, people are comparing them anyway. And that comparison is what makes the story so explosive. The legal analysis after Rick Chow's acquittal made people even angrier because some attorneys argued the prosecution may have failed to make Cyrus feel fully real to the jury. That may sound cold, but in a murder trial, storytelling matters. Prosecutors do not just present evidence. They have to make jurors understand the human life that was lost. One local attorney watching the case said the prosecution should have done more to humanize Cyrus, not just say he was 14, but show who he was, what his life looked like, and why the jury should feel the weight of that loss. That matters, because the defense did humanize Rick Chow. They talked about his background, his business, his family, his life. So, if one side becomes a full human being, and the other side becomes only a name, age, and surveillance video, that can shape how a jury feels the case. And then there is the chase itself. More than 100 yards is not a quick step outside the door. It is distance. It gives the public a visual. A child running, adults following, a gunshot, a body on the ground. That is why the acquittal still feels unreal to many people, even after the jury made its decision, and even after the verdict. The prosecutor's office did not sound like a team celebrating the system. The solicitor said he was disappointed with the outcome and still believed Chow's actions were not justifiable, even while saying he respected the jury's decision. That statement is important because it shows the gap between legal finality and public acceptance. A jury verdict can end a criminal trial, but it does not always end the argument, especially not when the public saw video, heard about the chase, heard that Cyrus was shot in the back, and still watched the defendant walk free. This is the same reason people keep dragging the Rick Chow case back into Karmelo Anthony's story. They are not saying the facts are exactly the same, they are saying the feeling is the same. One courtroom says fear justifies deadly force, another courtroom says fear does not. And once people believe that fear is judged differently depending on who is holding the weapon, who is running, who is black, who is white, who is older, and who is on trial, the verdict becomes bigger than the case. That is why this debate is not going away. So now the question is bigger than Karmelo Anthony and bigger than Rick Chow. What does justice look like when two families are destroyed, but the public only wants to argue about winners and losers? Austin Metcalf's family will never get him back. Cyrus Carmack-Belton's family watched a jury acquit the man who shot him. Karmelo Anthony's family is preparing for an appeal after a 3-5-year sentence. And the rest of the country is left fighting over whether the courts apply the same standard to everybody. That is why D.L. Hughley's reaction went viral. Not because everyone agrees with him. A lot of people do not. But because he tapped into a fear that many people already had, that self-defense in America can look different depending on who is asking for it. But the hardest truth is this. Every side of this story has pain. Austin was killed. Cyrus was killed. Karmelo was convicted. Rick Chow was acquitted. None of those facts cancel each other out. They just make the conversation harder. And maybe that is why people are so angry. Because once you compare these cases side by side, the question becomes uncomfortable. Is justice really blind? Or does it just look away at different moments? Drop your thoughts below, because this one is not simple.